The mainstream pop culture nature of porn, Grand Theft Auto is the prime example of that. So what does the research show? The research shows the average age at which an individual used pornography, boys in particular, is the age of 11. With the nature of the technology now, it's ubiquitous. It's something so easy to access. So that was why it's become such a global. So, you know, the interesting thing about Ted Bundy, his work was, his pornography use and his crimes were in the 70s, when pornography was hidden. Now, pornography is just so vastly mainstream now. If porn was available like it was in today's day, in Ted Bundy's day, then, you know, we would have seen much more violence against women. You know, it was less available then. So what does that say now? That it's more available, more accessible, influencing more people on a global level. Okay, what does that say now in terms of the link with violence? And this is the start point. Okay, Grand Theft Auto, GTA now in its fifth plus, you know, new edition version, biggest game in the world, biggest video game in the world. In 48 hours, can anyone tell me how much it made in 48 hours? Anyone got an idea? Anyone played a game here? Okay. You don't play that game, do you? 1 billion in 48 hours. It grossed 1 billion in 48 hours, Grand Theft Auto 5. Kids as young as 8, although it's an 18 rating, kids as young as 8 are playing because they go, Mummy, Mummy, I want the GTA 5, all my friends. Mum just buys it for him, she doesn't know what it's about. It's 800 hours of gameplay in a virtual world where you're going around robbing, stealing, pimping, raping, abusing, and the list goes on and on. And again, it's just creating a desensitization. And I've spoken to young men, boys who play the game, and they say, yeah, it does. It just, you're in this virtual world where you can do anything you want. And it just blurs the lines. It just makes you a bit confused about fantasy and reality. And you can do what you want. Okay? And what the research has shown, this is what the research has shown in terms of empathy. Okay? That individuals who watch, play games like that, who are immersed in this particular environment, okay, and linked to that obviously is gangster rap. Gangster rap is the, you know, the soundtrack is a gangster rap soundtrack. And maybe I'll just show you a bit about some of the lyrics in a minute, because it's kind of bombarding you in a completely high sensory, you know, in a very highly stimulating sensory way. What does the research show? The research shows individuals immersed in the medium, decreased empathy for rape. So they don't see rape as it. Women dressed provocatively should be raped, they deserve it. Okay, these are actually from the research findings from a study done in New Zealand. Anger at women who do not respond to their flirtation. So she's not responding to them. Decreased interest in their own partners. Increased coercion of the partner for sex. So they've used more force in order to elicit sexual behavior. So that's the kind of thing. So we've got boys now who are being exposed to Grand Theft Auto, again, more or less kind of exposes them to pornography and is shaping their masculinity, okay, from a very young age. And then again, music. So then we have this scenario in year 8. Year 8 is an 11-year-old boy. A boy who sat behind me in English class would try and unhook my bra through my shirt every day. In the hallway, he would come up behind me and grab my breasts. He thought it was hilarious. This is something which happens in schools every day, up and down the country. The schools are in denial. Do a lot of work in schools and just trying to wake them up and trying to realize, deal with this, because I know what's going to happen to this 11-year-old. First thing you've got to ask yourself is, why does this 11-year-old think this behavior is acceptable? That he can just be so sexually aggressive towards females? Why does everyone else in the social circle just laugh about it and think it's a joke and not serious and not sexual assault? Why? It's a sexual assault. Okay, and there's a golden rule I always use, which is, you know, the golden rule is treat other people like you want to be treated yourself. I.e., if this was your sister, your daughter, your female relative, how would you feel about it? We would be outraged about it. That's the golden rule. So this is outrageous. Now, why is he behaving this way? I know what's constructed this individual. You know, it comes from that. From that to that is not much of a jump, by the way. Because you're growing up, okay, that's your primary medium for learning about sex. Your parents don't talk to you about it. School doesn't really teach you much about it. Sex and relationship education is pitiful in schools. It teaches you about sex, but it doesn't teach you about relationships. It doesn't teach you about respect. It doesn't teach you about abuse. It doesn't teach you about rape. It doesn't teach you about if it's a porn, and the list goes on and on. It's still not improving. Still not improving. So that's what he learns. Then he learns the rest of it from his peer group. Okay, so you know he's learning it from his peers. So you know the main mediums for learning: porn, gaming. Okay, peer group. So all of your mates, older males. Where are they actually going to get something which teaches them something which challenges this narrative and challenges this medium? So where are they going to get that? So is it any surprise that we have individuals like that? And I can predict, because I work with them in prison, that where he's going to go next, this individual is going to go here next. Okay? Individuals happen to be called Bilal Khan. He's of Pakistani background, from Stoke. You know, and but you know, there are equally as many cases of white boys, black boys, you know, of the same age who have perpetrated the same crimes. Why did Bilal Khan think it was acceptable to, you know, attack a 20-year-old walking through the park, beat her up, orally rape her, and think this was acceptable? And afterwards, he didn't think he'd raped her. Didn't think this was rape. Thought she wanted it. So that's what you've got to do. This is acceptable behaviour. Does Bilal Khan look like the psychotic monster that we're talking about off his head on drugs? Does he look like that? It's like an average guy. An average guy who perpetrates a horrific kind of crime. And so this is what, you know, Stephen Beloff says, if you can't expect boys to be good boys unless they see it. So that's just part of another presentation that I do on sexual violence. Okay, what I identified was this in my research, that negative masculinity which sees the role of being a man is to be violent, to have sexual partners, to be powerful, controlling. Okay, you don't talk about sex, you're not having good, you don't have good quality education on that. Then next, you haven't got a moral compass which teaches you about treating people with respect and dignity. Social media and sexualized society, and gonzo porn, I'm going to come and talk about what gonzo is in there. Your peer influence and then negative role models. That's the reality of what's going on out there, which is creating the violent world that we are actually talking about. So, pornification of society. Okay, what are we talking about in terms of the pornification of society? I said, Gail Dines, who's written a book called Pornland. It's a very good video out there online, a very good website called Stop Porn Culture, and it's, you know, it's got all the facts and figures there. I encourage people to go and kind of look at that particular website. What Gail Dines talks about is this idea that porn has become mainstream. So you see that mainstream influences, and I'll give you an idea of that. On terrestrial TV, and it's not that I'm giving anyone ideas or anything like this, on terrestrial TV, you know, you have soft porn channels now on terrestrial TV that anyone can access at any time. So our television networks carry soft porn channels. So that's the reality of how it's become mainstream. Would you ever imagine, you know, I'm obviously a lot older than many of the people in this room, so one can't imagine that soft porn channels would be part of the normal channels that you flick through as you're going through your normal BBC and ITV, and then you go through soft porn channels in the adult section, and then, so that's how it's a mainstream thing. What's interesting, however, is this. The soft porn channels on TV, obviously they're running so they get customers, and they're channels where individuals phone in and talk to these women who are there just to be objects for them to instruct, do this and do that. It pays £1 an hour, £1 a minute, whatever it is. Now, the point here is this. That's still mild. And people become desensitized to that. People don't get aroused by that. That doesn't affect people. Why? Because there's a non-stop supply of free material of more extreme nature. And that satisfies what we call the insatiable appetite that individuals have. So when porn becomes mainstream, okay, then what happens to the porn industry? That's the question. That's what Gail Dines asked. What happens to the porn industry? What happens to the porn industry is that the porn industry, therefore, has to produce new genres, new material, has to go itself more extreme in terms of what it produces in order to pull people in that direction. And that all that means is more cruelty, more humiliation, more degradation for women on a global level. And again, you know, I just, as a reality check. So she talks about, similarly, Gail Dime talks about, you know, some like slut bus. She talks about a medium in her book called A to M. And what is A to M? I apologize if this kind of, you know, people, but you need to be aware of what's going on. It's the nature of the subject. A to M means arse to mouth. And what it means is this, that an individual anally penetrates someone, and she enjoys it, of course. And then immediately after anally penetrating her, he then orally penetrates her. Now, what is that saying about that, how that individual, and it is absolutely despicable. And that's why I want to get people into people's minds, especially individuals who watch pornography. I want you to think about how you are looking at a woman, because that's what it does. It's a mirror on how men see women. It's how you have, how you've accepted this cruelty against a woman, this humiliation against a woman, that somehow you know she has to then perform oral on you after anal, and you know, and that's how worthless she is that she's prepared to do that. That's shocking. And I hope you are quite shocked by that. And I hope you're shocked by the fact that kids as young as 11 access this material. Boys think this is normal, to go on and enact this. Girls, it becomes self-fulfilling, that they think that, and I'll give you an example. Every day they'll be bombarded by their peer group with images to say, you know, this is what you got, and this is why I'm saying this is not in sex education. They're saying, oh, this is sex education. No, they're saying, you've got to do this to me, you've got to do that to me. They're being bombarded every day. Pressure. The new bullying is not the bullying of name calling anymore, it's a sexualized bullying that's taking place, whereby girls are forced to perform sexual acts on boys. And if they're not, then they're slut-shamed. Then they're saying, oh, you know, and when they do, they're still slut-shamed. They're saying, oh, you're not prepared to do that, you're frigid, or then when you do it, oh, she's easy. And again, that's the massive double standard in the global level, which is exemplified by porn. The double standard in the world is this. When a woman is sexually active, even, you know, it's a double standard in the Muslim community, if she is seen as loose, how is she labeled? A woman labeled who is sexualized and sexually active. How is she labeled? Anyone? Tell me the names that are used to describe that kind of woman. Anyone? Slag. Okay. Anything else on this side? Too polite here. Someone, let's be honest. What are the words? Go on.
Back in school, like on Pakistani boys, there was this term like Asan hair.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy. Okay. You know, easy, rider easy, bicycle, you know, everyone's riding her. I've heard that time used to describe girls, that she's a bicycle. It's just disgraceful. You know, anyone can ride her, you know. Slut, hoe, bitch, you know, and the list goes on, and it's more vile, and there are more extreme language, descriptive language. No. How is the guy who's sexually active described? The guy who is going out and, you know, he's a player, he's a stud, legend. Guys, how is the guy described? How is he described? It's funny, but, you know, go on, what's it, you know, in a kind of popular sense, you know, on a global level, in whatever the country is, this guy who has as many women, he's masculine, he's macho, he's tough, he's the stud, he's the man, he's the dom, he's the biz, yeah? He's the lad, he's the geezer, goes on. So that's how the man is described, and that's how the woman is described. Where did this all come from, by the way? Why is there no equivalence? You know, why is it that that's the description? Who creates the paradigm? Men are creating it. How they're reinforcing it? Through porn, through that. You know, and why aren't we challenging it? Why aren't we challenging it? Because we're not really dealing with the problem of pornification of society. You know, that is just kind of reinforcing it. The real pattern that I've noticed is that this has always existed, by the way. What I'm telling you is not something new, it's in my time. The big difference is this. There's a big game changer. The nature of social media and the internet and the accessibility of material has made it available to a younger cohort of people. So it's really now influencing children. Children from the age of 9, 10, 11 are being socialized into this, are being desensitized and are kind of falling into it. So that's why kind of Gail Dines talks about boys reared on cruel and violent porn. 11-year-olds 33% of 13-year-olds regularly view pornographic material. 80% viewed it online. 14 to 16-year-olds, 63% of them had ease of access to pornography on their phones. And it's having, she talks about profound long-term psychological damage. I'm going to come on to that in a minute. And they say that, she talks about the same thing, girls are accepting this behavior, boys desensitized to it, girls want to be porn stars. It's an interesting, they had a survey around the vocational aspirations of teenage girls, and in the top 10 careers, it wasn't doctors, it wasn't lawyers, it was lap dancers, it was porn stars, it was kind of, you know, sex industry careers, celebrities and things like this, you know, glamour models. So, you know, you can see how that kind of affects. Another medium she talks about is this. You know, Gail Dines talks about a medium of pornography called barely 18. Barely 18. Why is it? And you see, what it is that there are thousands of genres of pornography. What is barely 18 about? And she said barely 18 is really a glorification of child and of paedophilia and of child sex. And again, there's been clear research, NSPCC, obscene images of children fuels fantasies of sex offenders, and there's a worrying link between child pornographic images and then rape of children. So again, the research is very clear on that. So barely 18 is about what? It's about girls. What they're saying is that they are children still. The legal definition of an adult is over 18. Before that, they were considered a child. So what it's in effect doing is that it kind of appeals to the fantasies of these individuals in their artificial worlds, artificial virtual worlds, where they see themselves as penetrating barely 18-year-old girls or children. And then the nature of addiction is that people then seek more extreme material. And then the third stage of, and again, the numbers of people that progress along the conveyor belt here, okay, this is a clear conveyor belt, by the way. It's not like the prevent conveyor belt, which has not got research behind it. This conveyor belt is absolutely clear. People go from porn to extreme porn to enacting porn to engaging in live behavior to violence. This is a known, scientifically proven, well-researched conveyor belt which takes place out there. So Gail Dines talked about child rapists and incest and how this is related to this kind of teen sex, barely 18 porn. All of it, she's saying, is that all of this is acceptance of violence towards women. And then it comes on to one of the things that she talks about, again, you know, which is called the money shot. Gail talks about the money shot. This in itself shows that porn is just about capitalism. And it's just basically about power, domination, and control. It's got nothing to do with sex. It's got nothing to do with intimacy. It's not something which is something you can learn anything from. No. Because in the vast majority of porn, the woman is so worthless in the porn scenario that even when it comes to the moment of climax, okay, yes, she's enjoying it and she climaxes and all these kind of things, yeah, okay, and the man has to go on and this and that, and then when it comes to the moment of male climax, the whole thing is what they call the money shot, which is the ejaculation all over her face. And what is the purpose of that? The purpose of that is, again, to show her worthlessness, that you are not prepared to have, you know, intimate sex with her, where an individual, and, you know, obviously, you know, husband and wife, couple, consensual couple, you know, good sex is about communication, respect, and trust, and about connection between two people. And it bonds that, and not only in a physical experience, but it's a spiritual experience. You know, that's what's beautiful about that. You know, in Islam, for example, you know, the Prophet, peace be upon him, this is unique about Islam. He was said that when the husband and wife enjoy each other, this is an act of worship. So the companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, they said, oh, is this something we are rewarded for? He said, yes, this is an act of worship for which you are rewarded, because it's not in the halal way, not in the haram way, in the permissible way, not in the impermissible way. So that's how it's a beautiful thing. This has got nothing to do with that. This is completely anti-sex. And this actually destroys people's normal sexual behavior, because they go further and down. They have this need for extreme behavior, and they see the other person not as a human being who they have compassion and care and love for, but just as an object that is to be used, abused, and even she's not worth it, then when you do climax, you just do it in a way which humiliates her and sees her as something which is lesser. So that's what Gail Dine talks about. Now, in terms of the porn industry, as I said, this is a global multi-billion pound industry. I haven't got the stats up there against on the Stop Porn Culture website, but I'll give you some of the figures. 24% of all internet searches are for pornography. There are 24 million sites on the world. 72 million visitors per month. That's 72 million individual visitors. Yeah, 13,000 porn videos are produced each year. Okay, there are 68 million daily searches for pornography, and Google actually does a country-by-country keyword recognition for what those different countries do in terms of searching for pornography. And when you put Pakistan up, it's kind of quite bizarre what Pakistanis are after compared to Estonians and compared to Lithuanians or Venezuelans. But this is a, so 68 million daily, 420 million pages. 89% of it is from the US. There are 100,000 websites which focus on child pornography. In the dark web, obviously it's illegal, and that's one of the things I warn people about. You're there searching, and obviously in the dark web or close to the dark web, you're going and get involved in criminal behavior. You may well be downloading criminal material. 43% of internet users view porn. 35 to 44 is the biggest age group. 10% of it leads to addiction. 70% of males between 18 and 24 visit porn sites. Okay, after 6 hours of porn, you lose interest in normal sex. That's the whole kind of mobile phone porn worth £1 billion a year. As I said, it's a $13.3 billion industry and growing. And the big corporations that control it are flooding the internet now with free pornography because they realize that then leads to people then eventually paying for it. Now, Philip Zimbardo, some of you might know, he's a world-renowned psychologist. He was responsible for the Stanford prison experiment. I know there's a film coming out about it later on this year. So he's written a book called, Man Disconnected. And in Man Disconnected, he talks about by the age of 21, American males, the average American males have spent 10,000 hours surfing the web, gaming, and the gaming we're talking about violent gaming, and watching pornography. 10,000 hours. And he talks about the fact that this is having a profound neurological effect. This is changing their very brain chemistry. Because what it does is it rewires the brain. The way that the addiction takes place, I'm not going to get too technical, is that the well-being hormone that is released when you watch pornography is the same that floods your brain when you take cocaine. Okay, it's called dopamine. Okay, dopamine, what cocaine does is that cocaine, when it comes into it inhibits the dopamine feedback receptors. So what happens is that dopamine is released, the feedback receptors are closed down, which means your brain floods with dopamine. And that gives you the high. Now, pornography, it works in exactly the same way. That's why it's highly addictive. It floods your brain with dopamine. You have that high. Equivalent, same high. It's the same high. I'm not saying in any way glorifying drug use or anything. It's the same high as cocaine use. That's why it's as addictive as that. And what you can do through what we call edging and what we call the Coolidge effect. The Coolidge effect is this, that, and they did this research actually on animals, and obviously they extrapolate that to the human as well, which was that they found that, a rat who has one sexual partner, okay, after a while, that rat becomes, like I said, disinterested in that sexual partner. So when they're just about to become disinterested, they would put another rat into the cage, and then the interest would continue. And then they would continue and continue to do that, and that rat would continue to show heightened sexual arousal and high levels of dopamine whenever a novel stimulus was presented. It's called the Coolidge effect. Until obviously completely knackered, and completely unable to physically exhausted. And that's what porn does. It does the Coolidge effect, because what people do is they constantly switch. They're watching a medium, and then the disinterest comes down, switch to a harder. Disinterest, switch to harder, switch to harder. And when you're talking about the number of pages, like I said, we were talking about how many pages which are out there, okay, 72 million visitors a year, 24 million sites, and I haven't got the number of actual pages, but we're talking about, tens and millions of pages out there of pornography. So that provides the non-stop, novel stimulus that you need, which causes you to maintain an artificial high of dopamine in your brain. And now this isn't just for males, this is also for females as well. Porn affects females, of course it does. Women watch pornography as well. Women become aroused by pornography, not to the same extent as males, but the same thing. And it's becoming culturally acceptable for females also now to, watch pornographic media. Completely acceptable for them to do that. And males often encourage them to do that, for acceptance. And women will go along with it because they will find that this gives them a sense of kind of acceptance. Okay, I'm going to rush through now because I'm going to, how much longer? 10, 15 more minutes? Yeah? Okay. So Philip Zimbardo talks about, the effect of the porn on the brain. He's talking about the Coolidge effect. And he says by the age of 21, individuals have immersed themselves in 10,000 hours. It's completely rewired their brain chemistry. It's created different neural pathways. And what it's done is that for the average American guy, it's got them desensitized to normal social interaction. So therefore, the whole interaction is in the virtual world and not in the real world. So as a result of that, they lost what he calls it social attention syndrome. They dumb down, their emotional intelligence has gone down. Their skills to relate to people and understand emotion and read other people is not there. And then he talks about ADHD as well. And then he talks about other fear of intimacy. Guys prefer the company of other guys. They have the inability to relate to females. It destroys their social skills. And this digital rewiring of the brain causes this need to be constantly aroused by the online medium that puts them out of sync with the kind of real world. So this is what Philip Zimbardo is talking about. He's talking about guys watching, I said 10,000 hours. So that's a massive kind of how the effect of the porn on the brain. But then it becomes even more serious when he talks about its direct link with violence. As I said, he was responsible for the Stanford prison experiment. So the Stanford prison experiment, if you look at it, it was about how, social roles, how creating a social environment profoundly affects individuals' behavior, and in particular how authoritarian they are. So if you're in this medium where you are just seeing women as just objects, subjugated, subordinate, lesser than you, then how is that going to rewire the brain in terms of your normal interaction? That's what Philip Zimbardo is talking about. But then it goes on more than that. This is the real problem. Women, females, in comparison to males, are doing better than men. That's a big cheer for the women here. Okay. They're doing better on an educational level, vocational level, academically in schools. So women are doing better on a global level. Men are. So men are here. Their emotional skills are dumbed down. They aren't able to compete with women in the same way. I see it on campuses. I see it all the time. Men are here, women are there. And they lack the emotional skills, and their brains have been rewired, and they have to reprogram and reconstruct that whole chemistry of the brain and change. And this is why it's a global issue. And that's why more people need to know about this, because this is going to have a profound effect in the next 10, 15 years in our world. When I showed you the violence against women we have now, it's going to have a profound effect on your children, and profound effect on your generation. Okay? How do men, I want you to ask me the question, how do men, if they are here and women are there, how do they equalize the relationship with women? Or how do they, and they're being also programmed to be powerful. They're being programmed by porn to be powerful. Women are not supposed to be above me, they're supposed to be below me. How will that manifest in real terms, in real life? Anyone?
You bring the women down below you.
How? Okay, yeah, so you bring them down. Okay, that's one way. Misogyny, absolutely. It's one of my, that's why porn is I believe, one of the most misogynistic mediums in the world. So you will, as men, pull women down. Okay, it's one example. From the, okay, yeah. Anything else? Okay, yes, it creates even more sexism. How do men balance the situation? I said pull women down, subdue them, more sexism towards them, more oppression towards them, but how do they maintain their dominance and control over women? How have they been programmed to do it?
Sexually.
Sexually, okay, yeah.
Position of power.
Okay. More simply than that. Come on. What are we seeing on a global level? Men towards women. What are we seeing? Violence. Men will only equalize that and create their dominance because they haven't got the emotional intelligence to do that. They haven't got the social skills to do that. They're detached from the reality to do that. They don't see positive male role models anywhere. They see the double standard globally. They're exposed and immersed in this medium. The only way they do it is through violence. We are breeding, that's what Gail Dines, everyone in this field is saying, we are breeding a generation of boys who will be cruel to women through porn. What did I start off by saying? Imagine a world without porn. And imagine why is it that Iceland, a liberal democracy that believes it's very progressive and free thinking, says porn is unacceptable. It's ahead, you know. Why? Because they've understood the link that we are going to create in the next 10, 15 years. We're going to see more cruelty towards women perpetrated by boys and men. That's the link. That is the clear link in terms of what's taking place. You look at gangster rap, you see the same thing. Gangster rap has 5 themes in it. One is the naming and shaming of women, the glorification of pimping. Women are gold diggers that can't be trusted. Violence against women is glorified. Women are being abused through sexual names. That's all there. And it becomes, you know, anyone who immerses themselves in that medium of constantly listening to gangster rap, again, how that has that kind of effect. And all this has happened in the last 20 years. In a very short period of time, we've seen a massive global change. Villages around the world in the most remote places, as soon as their smartphones came, and you know, I heard today Google are going to put up a helium balloon, which is going to provide super fast internet all over Indonesia. So all these Indonesian villages, which have no access to the internet, are going to now have helium balloons that are going to provide satellite, super fast Wi-Fi to those Indonesian islands which are remote. What's going to happen in those Indonesian islands in the next 10, 15 years? What's going to happen? Because they've never been exposed to pornography. Go on, what's going to happen?
Porn, then I'm guessing sexual violence. Like, so,
Yeah. You probably have some violence against women in those societies already. I'm not saying those are perfect societies. I'm sure there is some. But what you're going to see is different patterns of that violence. And you're going to be seeing perpetrated by groups of men. And you're going to see it perpetrated by young men. Because you have something coming into Indonesia, because they won't be able to stop it because of the nature of how, unless you really like Iceland, take that approach to completely close it all down, okay, you're going to have something which is going to fundamentally change the social fabric of that society. And that's why I call it the P-bomb. It's a porn bomb. It really is a bomb that lands and causes massive social collateral damage. Yet, again, the way that people look at porn is that, oh, it's not that serious. It's not really a big issue. Robert Jensen is, again, another anti-porn campaigner, lecturer in women's studies, and he talks about porn destroying masculinity and the end of masculinity. My PhD is, again, masculinity and violence, exploring these issues. Again, he talks about we're going backwards as a society because of what I've described about pornography. It's not forward. This isn't forward thinking. This isn't about being liberal. This isn't about being progressive. We're going backwards as a society. If we're in a society where young boys are being brought up to be cruel towards women and they view them completely in this through this extreme, okay, medium of gonzo porn. So what's gonzo porn? Gonzo porn is basically porn where, you know, it's what's used to describe the extreme pornography. My lecture notes are about maybe 2 years old. Okay, my lecture notes here. Because gonzo, we were talking about gonzo about 2 years ago. Gonzo is basically, you know, kicking, beating, slapping, urinating over women, rubbing feces on them, in their face, multiple males, genres where women are raped. That's what Gonzo is. That was 2 or 3 years ago. Now Gonzo is more extreme. And I want to talk about how Gonzo becomes even more extreme and how this has become what he calls the de facto sex education for boys. He talked about the violence, and he said 50% physical and verbally abusive, hitting. Okay, so this is what he talks about in porn. He said 50% of porn is physically and verbally abusive. 88% of it involves hitting, gagging, and choking. And the whole idea is that this is about masculinity and domination, and also within porn there is the nature of force and humiliation, words and arguments as well that are used as well. Again, the nature of it becoming addictive is such that individuals, become preoccupied with it, obsessed with it. They develop this tolerance for it. If they don't have it, they have withdrawal symptoms. Porn is used to escape. People become deceptive. They lead a double life because of pornography involving illegal acts. And also they end up getting in debt, destroying their relationships with their children and their families as a result of pornography. So the brain obviously is being significantly kind of affected by it. So obviously we can reboot the brain. So what's the rewiring of the brain? How do you rewire the brain? And this is part of dealing with the addiction part. I'll just finish with this here. Rewiring, it means that if these are very powerful things, because you've got to realize dopamine is something which is a very powerful neurotransmitter. It's a very powerful chemical in the brain. And it's like this. I'll give you an example of how you rewire the brain. This is what it requires to rewire the brain. And I'll use the female example, and people say, oh, pretty sexist, but look, there's a brother, he gets to get a free ride for a whole day. He gets to rent out a Lamborghini, a top-range Lamborghini. Yeah? So he's driving around his Lamborghini for a whole day. And how does he feel driving around that Lamborghini? Anyone? All of the sisters who like supercars, yeah? How does he feel? Pretty good. Okay, so now he's at that one. Next day, because he's getting dopamine rush. Next day he goes from Lamborghini, he's back in his, what's the worst student car? Renault Clio, yeah? He's in his Renault Clio, okay? So he's gone from Lamborghini to Renault Clio. Gone from that to that. It's called hero to zero. So what happens when he goes from there to there? Okay, if for example, he hasn't got the moral compass, how does he feel? Big drop, yeah? If he wants to get back into the Ferrari or the Lamborghini, yeah? Especially if that becomes an aspiration or something that so he's constantly chasing. But when he gets back into the Lamborghini, it's not enough for him, because the first buzz, you'll never have the same effect as the first time you use. So you want more and more and more. So this is the whole addictive cycle that becomes involved in that game. Similar to shoe shopping. I have about 50 pairs of shoes, so one could say maybe I'm addicted to shoe shopping. Or handbags, or whatever it is. Brothers maybe like buying handbags, who knows, yeah? Okay, so you can understand what we're talking about. How do you then change that, rebalance that? You only do it by this, that you have to see pornography for something which doesn't give pleasure, but gives pain. And you've got to create an alternative to that, which creates a more powerful brain effect that rewires the brain in a way which is about respect, dignity, and honor. That's what you've got to do. That's the only way you can do it. And I've got to say now, this is the challenge. I work with people who are addicted to pornography, and I've got to say that, it's hard for people to break out of porn addiction. Why? Because part of my lecture, and when I give this in a kind of to individuals who have problems, part of it is getting them to realize what we are talking about in terms of this is the way you look at women, this is the way you respect women, this is the way you are treating your female relatives, this is the way that you are dignifying other human beings, and then also the effect of how it is kind of trying to get them to do something, find an alternative to that. The reality is, in the online space, with young people now, 24/7, connected to a digital world and an online world, finding real-life alternatives towards this artificial kind of addictive medium is rare. So what we're seeing is, the point I'm making is that even in the rewiring of the process, healing the brain, changing restoring the default settings of the brain, okay? it's going to be hard. And unless we actually are open with problems, and that's why for an Islamic society, I know very few of them really want to talk about this issue. It's the biggest issue. I think it's one of the biggest issues affecting the human race and the Muslim community, because we don't talk about these issues, so we are more at risk than other communities, because they have some outlet to talk about it. We don't talk about it. It's a taboo issue. It's brushed under the carpet. Now, again, you know, and from the Islamic point of view, the Prophet also given it clear. He said, follow up a bad deed with a good deed and then wipes it away. So you've got to, whatever you do in terms of bad, you've got to replace it with the equivalent amount of good. That's the only way you end up kind of rebooting, rewiring, and kind of balancing the brain there. I hope that's been a lot of food for thought. There's a lot more material I could go through, but I'm really leaving it open to any questions or any comments. And, you know, again, like I said, this is not something that people find easy to talk about. I know some people have been taking videos and things like that. What I would suggest is that my main video is online already. It's called, you know, Internet Porn Addiction, and it's videos. Other people made a reference to that, which is a kind of more comprehensive video. You know, rather than put up other things on social media, I prefer you not to, because what people do is sometimes they kind of can edit it, or they can cut and paste things like this and put out things out of context. But, you know, I trust anyone here who is going to do that. But there are two really good videos that I've already got. If anyone wants to learn about this subject more, I suggest that you kind of just refer people to that. And it's interesting, I do lots of Islamic videos on lots of Islamic subjects, but the subject over the years which has received more attention than any other subject, like I said, and I think my video's got me about over 150,000 hits on it, is that video of man on porn addiction. You know, it's received more global hits than any other video I've done. So what does that say? It says it's a big issue. And more people have contacted me because of their porn addiction as a result of that video than any other. I've done one on forced marriage, I've done stuff on ISIS and things like this, but, you know, the forced marriage one, yes, a couple of people contact me regarding forced marriages, maybe got that 10, 20,000 hits, okay, but this is 10 times the amount. So it just goes to show you the scale of that particular issue. Thank you, everyone. I hope you found it useful. And forgive me if you found it offensive in parts, but this is the nature of the subject. I didn't mean to shock you or offend you, just make you give me a reality check. Anyone got any questions at all? Go ahead.
What do you think about, you know, you're talking about the feminists and about the whole women are disrespected. There's like feminist groups who like make feminist porn,
yeah,
and who think that like it's okay. So what do you have to say about that?
What it is that, again, that whole idea that women have, if women are in control or in somehow involved in the production process, then this is empowering for them, and they have the right to have ownership of their own bodies and all of that. Feminist porn probably accounts for less than 0.1% of porn out there. It's not porn. It's not part of the debate. 99.9% of the porn out there is this industry we're talking about. And it's all a hook, you've got to realize. Whether they use, and other people say, oh, what about erotica, about people who, or what about educational materials, yeah, or other things, whether it's more balanced, there's no humiliation, things like that. Yes, but the nature of that is that people become completely desensitized to that in a very short period of time, and they are pulled into the global, porn industry. So for the vast majority of individuals, even if they might start there, they end up in a completely different place. And the point is this, you are still glorifying the same industry.
Yeah. That's
the whole point. We're not there to, you're still glorifying the same industry. And interestingly, the people who promote these are the same corporations we're talking about. Manwood Corporation, that runs the biggest free site in the world. It has a genre called Female Choice. That's one of its genres, which is their, female-friendly pornography. But then that's set within everything else. And one of the other things I didn't mention is also, not only is it misogynistic, and it's also racist as well, in terms of how it treats black people, Asian people, how there's genres, which fetishize people of race. There's racist language that is used throughout that. Because again, that's all part of the dehumanization process. So the point is this, you might have this nice, healthy medium here, but it's been hijacked by everything else. And that's why Gil Vance talks about how porn industry has hijacked everyone's sexuality.
I was reading an article actually published by Pornhub, which is one of the like most commonly used porn sites.
Yeah.
And they were saying that Gonzo is the most viewed porn out there.
Okay.
But but they also said that when most guys initially view porn, they're 11 and 13, but they end up viewing Gonzo and get addicted to that. But then, thinking back to when I was 11 or 13, if I saw that, my reaction hopefully would have been, like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
But then how does a guy who watches that for the first time at 11 or 13 not get shocked, but then gradually get addicted to it?
Because there's a pullback. That's the whole thing. Everyone is shocked the first time they watch pornography because it's not normal. And the fact that there's a shock experience, and everyone will tell me the first time I viewed porn, I was shocked. I was disturbed by it. I didn't particularly like it. But I was pulled back to it. Because, of course, there's an attraction for men. Those heterosexual men are attracted to the female form. It's a reality. Likewise, females are attracted to the male form. We are attracted to it. So, therefore, there's enough to attract an individual in. And then after that, there is a gravitational pull that just pulls people back, towards it. And you're right. What's interesting was that, generally the kind of, you could say, the trajectory of porn usage was to start off with very soft materials and then progress over a period of time to the harder, more extreme material. Kids are going straight into the hard material now. There's no progression at all. Straight into that. It's traumatizing for the developing brain of a 11, 12, 13-year-old. It's called it's still an infant brain that's just gone from childhood to adulthood. It's all these hormones physiologically still developing. A lot of people say that the male brain is not fully mature until we're about 40. Okay, so that's a joke. Psychologists get it that way. No, it's about 25 that the brain starts to actually develop what we call high-level thinking skills. So you're not until from 11 to 25, women actually develop it a lot quicker. So the point here is this, that has a traumatizing effect on that developing brain. And kids are disturbed by it, traumatized by it. If you can't talk to anyone about it, interestingly, you turn back to it. There's other things as well. Oxytocin. Oxytocin is the, for boys and girls in early adolescence, is the association hormone. And so therefore you have dopamine with oxytocin. Oxytocin creates the association and the link. So that's the pull factor as well. That's why it's so damaging for children. And that's a big game changer, I said. People were generally accessing porn at an older age. And now you have hundreds of millions of children accessing it at a younger age. That's the big kind of change that's it. So, related to your question as well, there's an interesting thing. When I do this presentation, a lot of men also say to me, oh, but I'm not like that. I can watch porn and it's going to make me into a rapist or a misogynist or this and that. So they use a similar argument to the feminist argument. And I said, good for you. Which is great. You've got lots of positive influences and pro-social influences that balance out. So I do this bad stuff, but I'm not going to become that. That's just the same argument that's used for middle-class drug use. Where people have what we call recreational drug problems. You've got a nice job in the city, you're quite well off, you've got lots of other positive influences in your life. I do a bit of heroin and I do drugs on the side, and I'm all right. It doesn't affect me. But you're right. You've got enough. That works for you, brilliant. That's not the reality of most people out there. Most people do not have a counter narrative, don't have pro-social influences in their life, don't have something positive that balances this out. So therefore, I'm not able to use that in a constructive way. So therefore, it pulls them into the whole negative aspect of it.
You mentioned that rape is mainly a men's crime.
Yes.
So what do you think contributes to women raping?
Okay, you see, in the UK, this is the UK. In the UK last year, there were 85,000 reported rapes last year. 99% of it was male on female rape. Most of it is still underreported. Okay, there is female on male rape, and there is also female on male domestic violence as well. It's generally underreported, so we don't really know. So that 1% women who rape, and although there has been some really high-profile cases, what we do know is now older women grooming boys, teenage boys, and having sex with them, which is obviously illegal, statutory rape, and also because there's the kind of grooming element to it as well, exploitation of them, and sometimes it's forced sexual abuse. It's a taboo, you see. It's men. There's two aspects to it. There was one case of a teacher, I think, a woman who did have rape a 12-year-old, But then the dad came out and said, oh, he liked it, there wasn't really a problem. So there's this kind of male acceptance of it. It's rape, that's the whole point. So there's two aspects of it. One is the shame of a male coming out and saying that I've been raped, okay, and I've been raped by a female. So there's one element of it. The other element of it is, oh, I'm a stud actually, and that's used as part of the grooming process. But the woman is clearly grooming you because you're a child, so there's a clear exploitation and sexual grooming element to it. And it's statutory rape, so that's why it's underreported. I would presume, yeah, it's higher, but people are not going to report it because of those kind of cultural stigmas around reporting female or male rape, and male and male rape. Men are raped as well. It's hard enough for women, but we've made it easier now for women to come and to actually, value and respect what they're saying and not disbelieve them. The male and male rape, again, it's the same thing there. Males are ashamed to come forward and say that they've been raped and to make it something that's complex.
What do you think is the best method to prevent these things for parents the method to prevent their kids from doing this stuff?
Okay, look, there's the online protection, of course, online protection. Making sure that computers have all the relevant software on it, keyword protection, so that there isn't access to material. That's one way of doing it.
I'm talking about more spiritual way.
Okay, I'm going to move on to it. So there's that. So then there's this. This is the debate. Do we give our children these things? Do we give them these things? These are extremely immoral. No, why not? Why don't you give them one of these?
They don't need it.
Huh? Yeah, give them old Nokias, yeah, burner phones, and they don't give them these ones. So this is the problem. It's a massive problem. You are giving someone a really tool which is going to can be used for really positive stuff, but also really negative and dark stuff as well. So that's the kind of problem. So it's hard. Kids have so much peer pressure on them and expectation that they have these, and you can't even get the old phones. That's kind of like. But this is a real kind of challenge. So what I've done is, obviously I have 5 children, 3 older children in their 20s and 18s, and 2 younger ones, 10 and 3. So I've got 5 kids, and I've realized how do you deal with it, and you deal with it as a parent, okay, by having an open relationship. You talk to your kids about these things. You prepare them for the reality of what's out there. You make them aware of the risks. You put the strong values in there. The values are around what your values are. Value yourself as a human being. You have haya, modesty. Be modest that you're before your creator. Okay, value the fact that you're chastity. Protect the fact that your sexual behavior is not something which is to be given away freely. And, this is the thing about protecting chastity. Yeah, you protect yourself. Yeah, and value it and choose to share that with someone who is special in your life, who's your partner that you have made a commitment to through marriage. That's obviously our values. Those values are eroding. I've got to say, in the last 25 years, my research, I started a project in the 90s on sexual health, and this is always a subject that I've been involved in for, and I haven't got the figures, but I would say in the early 90s, I would say generally in the Muslim community, the number of people who engage in extramarital, premarital sex was probably on a percentage level back in 1990. I estimated roughly about 20%. Now I would say it's probably about 50%, 40 to 50%. So there's a massive social change that's taking place in our community because they've lost that value. But how do you build that value? You can't do it by forcing people. That's the whole thing. You see, when you force people, they only lead double lives. That's the whole point. And I'm going to come on to why I believe is a real solution, in a minute. So you can't force it. What you've got to do is you've got to create an environment of openness, of trust. You've got to teach people strong values. You've got to make them what I call self-esteem and core values. Very important. And you can't force them, but you've got to, create a sense that they genuinely, young people, want to follow those values. And this is it. A lot of this is about self-esteem, that you don't fall into peer pressure. Go with a crowd. Just go. Lots of people just go along with what other people are doing. That's the way you do it, and then you just allow them to do that. But then you've got to provide a real solution to the sexualized society. Where here, I was in Newcastle yesterday with young people like yourselves, and young people there on campus, come on, you know, you are young people, healthy people. Of course you are sexually attracted to the opposite sex. Of course it's going to happen. I'm not living in denial. It's a reality of what takes place. Okay, some people are different. Some people have more sabr and more sense of control and, you know, and can wait. Other people, they can't. So what's the solution? The solution is, as we know, marriage. That's what Islam has prescribed. So as far as I'm concerned, as an imam, two people want to get married who are young, they want to get married. You know, and have, you know, have a healthy, enjoyable, satisfying relationship with one another. You know, that's to me is the solution. But this is, as many scholars, they say, we've made zina easy and marriage hard. Should be the other way. Marriage should be easy and zina should be hard. That's the way. But you know, and then, as I said, not only do we have this, and one aspect I haven't even spoken about is the whole social media aspect of it, which is basically now that we have all these hookup apps. And you know, these apps which then enable people to go from the virtual porn world to the real world, to find communities and individuals. And I had a case now where a 17-year-old was groomed online by a 40-year-old male. Obviously, you know, a Pakistani family,